Welcome back to Turning Hard Times to Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm glad to tell you that Dr. Quinton Hennigh is with me again to share some of his top picks with you today. And some of you who are older, like me, can remember an advertisement for a brokerage firm named E.F. Hutton. Remember, those of you who can remember, there was an ad on television that proclaimed that when E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen, at which time all of the people walking around on the street stopped and cupped their ears so that they could hear what E.F. Hutton was saying. And so that's kind of the way I think when I listen to Quinton Hennigh. Is I want to hear what Quinton Hennigh has to say about exploration companies. He has a great reputation, has been responsible in the discovery of some world-class deposits over the years, having worked for major companies and then more recently for juniors, and now working with Crescat Capital, which is a company that is doing very much invested, one of the few that are invested in the exploration sector. They seem to see the potential that most other investment firms are not recognized, or at least not to the degree that Crescat is. And within the last couple of years, Quinton joined that firm formally, and so he's involved every week on Fridays at about 2:00 Eastern time, and sometimes a few minutes later, to tell people about the companies that Crescat is investing in and the reasons for it. And Quinton speaks to that. So it's really great to have him today with us to share a few of the stories that he's most excited about. Thank you, Quinton, so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Jay.
It's really always good to hear from you. You are a frequent guest on this show, sometimes talking about our sponsors. Today, most of them are not sponsors, but there's very exciting stories. I guess maybe before I ask you to talk about the first one, El Oro Resources, maybe just tell our listeners what it is, talk in lay terms, what it is that you look for before you suggest to Crescat that they commit some capital to exploration projects.
That's a really good question, and I'm kind of glad you started there because this opportunity I've had to work with Crescat has really given me a chance to, focus on allocating capital in the exploration space. And what we like to focus on are potential discoveries of world-class magnitude, like tier one status. Okay, we're looking for big discoveries, and even if they're very early stage, if the story is compelling, if there's enough evidence, the superficial evidence, footprint of the alteration system, the geochemical expression of the system, looking at analogs in the area, what might a new discovery look like? Those kind of data we bring back, and I kind of pick them apart. I talk with the company usually at length about what their exploration strategy is, because we like to make sure if we invest money that it's allocated towards exploration. We, for the most part, we've had very good experience with companies. We have meaningful discussions about how they're going to use the capital that they get from these raises and allocate it to make discovery. And in some cases, I'm fortunate to even get to help on the technical side with this, which I like to do. So it's really a combination of factors. It's really about looking at the opportunity, the geological, geochemical, and geophysical aspects of the opportunity, and looking at, of course, jurisdiction is very important. We got to have a jurisdiction where there's demonstrable ability to build mines. I don't want to invest in countries where there's no history of building mines, or there's opposition, social or otherwise, to it. We want to invest in places where we know there can be mines built. And, at the end of the day, and then the last component, of course, is, working with the management and exploration team that's going to focus on the prize. They got to explore. And the goal is to find discoveries that are going to be purchased by major mining companies. This is really the product of most junior companies out there, is to make discovery that's going to ultimately be sold.
Yeah. Most juniors are not successful, or it's very, very few and far between that where the exploration is one skill set, and then production and building, engineering, and building and producing is another skill set. And so best to do what you're best at, and just stick to your knitting, as they say. Well, let's start out by one of the companies that you like a lot, and it is a sponsor to this show, El Oro Resources. ELO, ELRRF in the U.S., 69.9 million shares. I saw a little earlier today, $2.22 in U.S. money, $154 million market cap. It's a company with a silver tin-rich polymetallic deposit, and it's a big one in Bolivia. I believe they're going to come out with a resource pretty soon, or just give us a story on this one again.
Sure. Look, very early stage, we invested in this. It was back in 2020, kind of the couple months into the pandemic, in fact. And, the reason I jumped in or wanted Crescat to jump in is because the exploration team certainly knows what they're doing. Osvaldo Arce and Bill Pearson, very top-notch team. But the evidence they showed me was compelling that this was a mega world-class silver polymetallic system like one would find elsewhere in Bolivia. And there's several examples, in Bolivia. I would say the Potosí district, which is a historic mining district that is still actually in active production, artisanal miners miner, is huge. It's produced, about 1.5 to 2 billion ounces of silver at best estimate. But then you have other mines like San Cristobal, which is in Bolivia, which is producing mine. It's a silver, zinc, lead mine that's been operating for about 15 years and absolutely produce huge amounts of those metals. Okay, and this Isca property, when they first showed it to me, it was clear. The footprint, the geology, this collapsed caldera setting, everything about it smelled like a major new discovery. They started drilling in September of 2020. They haven't stopped drilling. In fact, they've been drilling many holes. I think they're getting upwards of around 100,000 meters. And at this point, they've demonstrated there's a volume of rock that's on the order of 2 cubic kilometers that is mineralized. Okay, it's not all mineralized, but within that 2 cubic kilometers, there's a substantial amount, probably on the order of 30, 40, 50% of the area at any given location is mineralized. So we're looking at a deposit that could be hundreds of millions of tons. What's it likely going to deliver? Well, I think it'll deliver a very typical resource for this type of system. It'll probably have, around 30, 40 grams silver on average. It kind of comes and goes. There's areas where it's higher and lower, but you got to take it as a whole, about 30, 40 grams silver. But then the lead zinc is probably going to be combined about maybe 1.5% or 2%. And then it's got this tin component. This tin component is a real value add because tin, very high price, about $20,000 a ton, plus or minus right now. And it's got about maybe 0.1 to 0.2% tin at any given location. So this thing is truly a, kind of a cornucopia of different metals all compacted into one. They've done enough metallurgy to show that it produces very high quality concentrates that are going to be saleable anywhere on the planet. And it's really, in March, I believe, is when they're targeting their initial resource estimate. And I think it'll set the table for, the market will clearly see that this is a world-class discovery, but also set the table for, what could be a compelling story that will be advanced towards production over the next couple of years. Bolivia is, in my view, a very, very good location. They've made great strides to improve the political and investment climate in the country. They're basically where Peru was in the early 1990s. They're really shifting to a much more friendly environment. So I think that I think this is a great discovery in a jurisdiction that is turning around very quickly.
Oh, well, you think so? In March of next year, we a maiden resource. That's the target date anyway. Might we expect something? Hundreds of millions of ounces of silver potentially. I mean, you're talking 30 grams or something like that over a huge amount of rocks.
Exactly. Look, my guess is and on the order of 400 million on the low end, million tons. Maybe on the high end, even get closer to 1 billion. I don't know. I mean, it depends on the resource modelers.
Sure.
But yes, I mean, if you're talking those kind of grades, you're talking about hundreds of millions of ounces of silver, but also many, many millions of tons of zinc and lead mineralization or metal, in the ground, as well as tin, like an enormous amount of tin. Okay, so this thing's going to have a very, very good ending.
All right. A second one that I know you're in love with, well, I shouldn't say that because I don't know, maybe things have changed, but Snowline Gold Corp, and I can't imagine that you're not in love with it after we saw the assays that were announced I guess just this morning. It was just phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Just to tell us about Snowline.
Yeah, look, it's an amazing discovery. It's in the Yukon. It's what we call a tintina type or tombstone type gold system. It's associated with what we call reduced intrusions. In this case, the reduced intrusion is a diorite or granodiorite body that brought up just a huge amount of gold, and it produces a fairly disseminated style of gold mineralization. It's got a little bit of bismuth and tellurium, but these things are typically very metallurgically friendly, and that's what makes them work. These things run a gram or two per ton. In this case, the high grade core is probably looking on the order of it's probably 250, 300 million tons is my best guess, maybe upwards of 2 grams per ton, something like that. So that's a huge, huge discovery in itself with a halo around it that's starting to take shape. I do think the system is going to take some more drilling next year. What I'm seeing is as we see data come in, the picture becomes more and more clarified. It looks like the high-grade core, which is now well established, is a very, very large size, but it also appears to extend to depth. It looks like it has some deep, deep roots to it. So that's going to have to be tested next year. But it also looks like the west and southwest side of the intrusion, the mothership, we'll call it, is also mineralized out into the hornfells, into the country rock. So, this thing is really taking shape. I've said publicly several times, on the low end, I mean, look, this is almost certainly a 20 million ounce discovery. Could it be much more? Yeah, I think so, especially when coupled with some of the nearby targets they have, like the Gracie target, which is just across the hill. Okay, these are enormous systems, and this one is well endowed with grade. Typical tintina type might run a gram. This one is running more like 2 grams. Okay, that's a big, big plus. People say, "Oh, it's remote." Well, you know what? It's not so bad. There's actually a winter road not too far from there. I've met with the ministry, the various politicians and civil servants that work in the Yukon to discuss this location, the ability to build a mine here. I've also looked into the First Nations. This is a First Nation territory that is where Eagle is built. Okay, so we're dealing with the same First Nations in every respect too. So this thing is an amazing discovery that will become probably the biggest, in my view, the biggest single gold deposit discovered in Canada since Hemlock.
Wow, that's saying something. Well, I want to thank you very much for this. Certainly, I learned to know of this story through you, and also my subscribers are very pleased as well. We've done very well with it, having purchased it early on. Well, a fraction of what it's selling at now, $2, around $2 in U.S. money today, 132 million shares. Okay, well, then, which leads me to another story, and you sort of teased your listeners, your viewers at Crescat Gets Active, the video that you guys do every Friday, about the next Snowline target. And I've sort of learned to know that maybe that might be tectonic metals. Maybe you just comment on that real quickly.
Certainly. Look, Tectonic has a project they call the Flat Project. It's in western Alaska, which is at almost the opposite polar extremity of the Tintina Belt from Snowline's project. But they have what is absolute hands down a very, very large Tintina type system. Footprint of the alteration in the gold system is on the order of about 6 to 8 square kilometers. It's absolutely huge. It's actually not far from Donley Creek. So there's an analog nearby, although this one is not refractory. Okay, I've one of the tests I had, to make sure we wanted to invest was to look at the metallurgy, and the metallurgy of this flat project is not refractory, so it is free milling, which is very important for these types of deposits. Now that the company kind of has the green light to go ahead and explore a flat, they had a few things they had to work out. They've got those worked out. We're jumping in both feet here. I think it's another major discovery in the making. There's about 50 or 60 historic holes on the property. Actually, some of them drilled, or many of them drilled by Robert Friedland back in the 1990s. Believe it or not. And you might say, well, why did Robert Friedland? Well, he found this little deposit in Mongolia called Oyu-Tolgoi, and then a lot, drifted his attention drifted to Mongolia. But he left what is apparently amazing discovery in the making. So we're into that one. We've also, people see, yes, in the past 24 hours, We've jumped into another story called Rakla. I won't go into details there, but it's in the Tintina Belt. In short, we're seeing the Tintina Belt as being one of the most prospective gold belts, for exploration, prospective gold belts in the world, in the first world, we'll call it, where you can build mines. So we're going all in on these discoveries.
Might you be talking about that new company, Crescat gets active this week? Possibly.
We have our 100th anniversary. If we have time, I will, but we have another things lined up for this week. So it's a funny week.
Okay, well, some time to come. Well, real quickly here, we're going to run out of time. Brixton Metals, tell us about that one.
Know what? I'm going to talk about Brixton and Pacific Ridge.
Okay.
The reason I'm going to talk about both of them together is because earlier this year, with copper at $4.50 a pound, and talking with Kevin and Tavi, they wanted more exposure to copper. So we've jumped into both Pacific Ridge and Brixton at what I'll call cheap prices, early stage in some respects discovery. But both of them now have demonstrable major copper and copper gold discoveries. Okay, so Brixton has Camp Creek, which is a buried porphyry, but it could be a billion tonner. It's running about 0.7%. BHP recognized the potential too, and they've jumped in both feet. They now have 20% of Brixton, so we're very happy co-investor alongside them. We also have 20%. Okay, we have Pacific Ridge, which now has two major copper gold discoveries of Clayule and RDP. Both look like they're lining up to be major discoveries of the ilk of Red Chris. So they're very gold rich copper porphyries. They're associated with alkaline rocks. Both of them look like they're deep rooted, and they drilled a bunch of holes this year. They announced some from RDP that clearly show that thing could have absolutely shoot the lights out. By the way, that's in a joint venture with Antofagasta. And then they've got a lot of drill results coming back from Clayule here shortly. So I'd say, hold on, wait for the news. I think we'll see good things out of both those companies. But it really gives us good exposure to exploration in the copper realm.
Copper and you got gold, I think, with both projects, both companies, right?
Yes, correct.
They're copper, gold, porphyries, and very large projects. And if a BHP comes into the picture, they have to believe there's something big there. They
exactly, yeah. Seeing these juniors like Brixton have BHP, and then Antofagasta into Pacific Ridge, those are very, very, very good signs. Okay,
all right.
That's what
all right, with just a couple of minutes left, I know you mentioned before we came on the air, I-80 Gold. I mean, my goodness. I mean, it's certainly one of my favorites. It's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, this is a gold company that they've also come into some base metals. I guess we'll just talk about it.
I'm going to just hit this one hard. This is one of the best things that's happened in Nevada in decades, to be frank. And what they've done is they've taken an old district called Eureka. It's way down in central Nevada, and it's a district that a lot of people kind of have looked at as historic mining. Okay, there's a bit of base metal, a little bit of gold and silver. Some high grades too. There was pretty good high grades in the camp, but it kind of saw an end to mining in that era, like in the 1950s. Fast forward, gold was discovered there. Carlin-type gold was discovered in the 1990s by Homestake, which then became Barrick. The Ruby Hill mine and Archimedes were developed, and it made a great little gold mine, a little oxide gold mine at a very a tough time in the gold space. Gold was $2.50 an ounce in the 1990s, but it made money. Okay, so fast forward now, Ewan has picked up this ground, this basically consolidated large block of ground there at the old Barrick property at Eureka, and he's drilling. And this is exactly what you need to do in these old districts. Drill. Okay, that's it. It's simple. You do good science, you drill, and they are making amazing discoveries. So not only are they finding more and more of the Carlin mineralization, which could be multi-million ounces as it's on its own, they're finding this absolutely amazing replacement CRD type mineralization, carbonate replacement mineralization, which is phenomenally great. Base metal, gold, silver, everything. I mean, it's just astounding the dollar value per ton of some of these drill intercepts they're seeing. These are some of the best intercepts I've seen in a long time, and I really wish the company well. I talked to Ewan yesterday. He's got big plans. He's going to extend his exploration as soon as he gets plans of operation set up for the southern area to extend this new discovery. He's recognized a porphyry target at depth. He said they might even drill that next year. he's recognizing that he's onto an absolutely immense system here. It could be a world-class deposit, and have different styles of mineralization. Carlin, CRD, skarn. There could be porphyry down there. It's kind of just a cornucopia of different types of deposits in this case. So good on him. Good on him.
Oh my! It's an amazing story, and of course, that's one of only about 3 or 4 projects that he's moving towards production, right? I mean, the others are good too.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, up at Turquoise, well, in the area around Granite Creek and stuff, absolutely great Carlin type deposits and potential. He's doing a great job.
Yeah, it's really a great story. Well, I want to thank you, Quinton, for spending a little time these are just a few of the stories I know you're following that you're really involved with on behalf of Crescat Capital, and it's always great to hear from you. Always great to get your input, because I know it means a lot. It brings confidence to people who know your track record, and it's actually the best of times to look at this sector, because it's so unloved, and it's exactly at these times. I was just talking about the uncertainty in the world these days, the uncertainty in our monetary system, the gold. The dollar-based system, is wearing thin and maybe in trouble. Not any better time than now, even though most people aren't interested. But that's the best time to look at things when nobody else wants them. And I thank you very much for helping us understand these stories, so that we can be prepared for when the times get better for this sector. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jay.